was voted most likely to succeed in high school.
Yumna Jawad.
Yumna Jawad. She's a food influencer, entrepreneur, and viral chef. 10 million plus social media followers.
So good. People think that everything they consume, they need to fit into it. And if it doesn't, it almost bothers them. And they have to realize that not every message is for everybody. There's a 10-bean soup recipe. Well, I don't like 10 beans. Well, it doesn't have to be for you. And then when I came to the States, it just felt a little lonely. I'm not Arabic enough, or I'm not American enough, and felt a little bit more like I was being judged.
How did you meet your husband?
I was like, hi, I don't talk to boys, like, salam alaikum, don't talk to me. But then I was like, here's my email, you can have my email. Then he went to U of M and we became best friends.
There's a dark side of social media that a lot of people won't know.
My cookbook came out, I got 9 raving reviews. One person gave me a 1 star and said, and that hurt so much. Everything happening with Gaza and me standing up for what's going on. And I think the names that I was called, those were the most hurtful. Nancy and I have been talking about food for 7 years. And Nancy loved my kids in that one video. And now Nancy thinks that I'm X, Y, and Z because I'm sitting here supporting this. Social media is sucking so much life out of all of us. And I'm addicted to my phone. And I'm afraid to admit it, but I actually am addicted to my phone.
Are you tired?
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Do you think that you'll ever sail into the sunset and just call it quits? You know her as Feel Good Foodie. You've seen her recipes before, but there's more to it. Yumna has a story that she doesn't share much of online. She's always smiling and cooking up creative recipes, but you don't know what happens when the cameras are off. And that's what we're going to find out today. If this is your first time watching an episode, this is a great time to join the family and subscribe because this podcast is only going to get bigger and bigger from here. And if you've been here before, I want to thank you because without you, this couldn't have happened. And with that being said, let's get the show started. Welcome aboard Middle East Airlines.
والمتوجهة إلى
طيران الشرق الأوسط يرحب
مدينة القدس العربية.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Not From Here. Yumna, the way I start this off usually is introduction on your part, but it's an introduction in a way of self-reflection. So when you look into the mirror, who is Yumna to Yumna?
Yeah, I love that question so much. When I look at me, I think of everything that I think of myself as a mom first. I think that's the first thing that I think of. And I think of all the things that I've done and all the places that I've been. And it's funny because I grew up in Dearborn, Michigan and was voted most likely to succeed in high school at 18 years old. And growing up with that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm most likely to succeed out of 400 people in my Fortson class, graduating class. What does this mean for me? And there was a lot of this pressure just thinking about what does this mean? What am I going to do? And so I ended up working in marketing for 10 years, very unfulfilling jobs where I never found my passion. I'm like, is this what it means to be successful? Like, I'm making good money. Is this what it means? And it wasn't until I found my passion and accidentally found a job that, you know, I was able to carve and make my own, that I really found out who I was and what success meant for me. Alhamdulillah, now I think of myself as Yumna is a recipe developer, an entrepreneur, and now an author.
Why did you think you got voted most likely to be successful?
I think it came down to the smarts for the most part. I was number 2 in my class out of 400 people in my GPA, and I was just always such a go-getter as well. So I had the grades there. I was president of National Honor Society. I was like best female athlete of the year, best, you know, all the things that you can think of. I was just kind of this very active kid who wanted to do everything and be involved in everything. So I was super outgoing, and every time there was an event, I was out there selling tickets for it and telling people to join the Booster Club and telling people why they should, you know, come to the football game tonight. And I started a talent show that we never used to have at Fortson. I was the first one to start a talent show there in, 2000, I think it was. And so I was just one of those people who was always very active at school, always there. People would see me after school every day doing something, asking for something, raising funds for something. And so I think they saw that activeness and also the smarts as like, oh, she's going to do something one day. And it's funny because in 2020, we started a group chat for my graduating class, and it was our 20-year anniversary. And everybody, literally there was 180 people on this group chat on WhatsApp. And everybody started joining in, and somehow everyone found phone numbers and everyone's joining everyone in. And it's funny because a lot of people follow each other on social media. And what's funny is somebody's like, oh my gosh, I found Yumna on TikTok. And I was like, joke's on you guys. You thought I was going to be most likely to succeed. And here I am dancing on TikTok and making smoothies.
What's your version of success? What
I
does
think,
it mean to you?
yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think that at the end of the day, I think success is achieving a dream that you set out to and making yourself proud of whatever that dream is. And I think for me, I set out to have a job where I didn't feel like I was working or that I needed to work. And I set out a job where I can pave my own path. And so it was this dream that I had to wake up so excited to go to work. And I just remember having jobs where, like, I worked in market research, for example, which was really fun, or I worked on car brochures for marketing. And there's jobs that looked really good on paper. I'm like, this is what I went to school for. I went to U of M to do this. And I get to the point where I'm doing those jobs. I'm like, they just look good on paper, and I'm not excited to go to work today. And 9 out of 10 days, I was not that excited to go to work. And so I set out a dream for myself where I would wake up in the morning, super excited to work. And now, honestly, I love even working on vacations. It feels like a dream to be able to do that. So that's my success. for
Because
me.
a lot of people, I think, Yumna, they're gonna look at the subscribers, they're gonna look at the followers, and be like, that's their version of success.
Yeah.
That you have millions of people that tune in every single day to see what you cooked, and then on the other side, people will say, "Oh no, success is the amount of money that Yumna accumulated throughout this career." But now you're saying you did not mention either.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when you look at those numbers, and I think those numbers are more concrete. Like, Feel Good Foodie is a multi-million-dollar business, and my social media has multi-million, followers on it on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, all those things. And so when you look at that, that feels like success. People hear, "Wow, like multi-million in dollars and in Instagram followers, like that's insane," and that to them feels like success. But I think that even if I had all those things and I felt like I was going to work every day and not excited to go to work every day, it would feel daunting to me, and it would feel like I needed something else. And so I look at, how happy I am to go to work every day, because my job changes every day.
Yeah.
One day I'm creating an oatmeal company, another day I'm, working on search engine optimization for my website. And the next day I'm launching a cookbook, and it's so exciting to be able to build this path. And so that feels like what true success feels to me.
Yeah. Before all of this happened, though, you grew up in Africa,
Yeah.
and how was that experience like? You came here at about 11, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how was it, the getting raised in Africa part?
Yeah, it was, we lived in a tight-knit Lebanese community, actually, and I went to a Lebanese international school. That's what the school was called. So from kindergarten to 12th grade, if you will, everybody went to the same school. And when I had a birthday party, the entire city was invited to my birthday party. So I grew up just knowing everyone kind of knowing who I was and who my dad was and what we did. And really not a lot of privacy, but at the same time, like, such a beautiful communal feel. And then when I came to the States, it just felt a little lonely, even though I had so many cousins here. At the same time, it just felt different. I felt isolated. I also felt like I didn't belong here because I didn't grow up here, and it felt like the Arab here weren't like me. The Americans were really different from me, and I missed home. And so it was definitely a culture shock leaving one and coming to the other. But I feel like I'm now able to just set my own path and make it what it is.
In what way were the people different
Here,
between here and Africa?
I think, I don't know. It's hard to say. I feel like I'm trying to decide like how it felt different. I think it's just like,
Do you think because it's more of like a small knitted community that it was like everyone's family, like everyone's living in the same house, kind of?
yeah.
I mean, here it's still it's a small community, but
I think you think so too. And I think it was just a lot more like trust and less judgment, and just more like everyone knew Fuad Mekki was my dad. And like, they all knew where I lived, and they all knew that like even my grades were in school. Like, everyone just knew everything about everyone.
Yeah.
And so there was just this like sense of trust and not having to like prove yourself or not having to like say who you are. And so when I came here, I was like, well, I'm not Arabic enough, or I'm not American enough. And it just felt a little bit more like not belonging, and felt a little bit more like I was being judged in a way. And now, I mean, I feel like I was able to find the group of friends and find my community and find my voice to feel more comfort and more ease.
absolutely, I
Yeah.
feel like that definitely makes sense. I also was curious about the nature of living in Africa, or living anywhere far away from home, really. Our parents were really big on culture, and you mentioned your mom make Lebanese food 7 days out of the week. You guys would not eat out. So the culture with the food is one thing, but holding on to that like larger Lebanese culture, how did you think your parents did that?
When we moved here, I think they did a pretty good job, but I think at the same time, I think that when we first moved here, my mom was more worried about us assimilating into the culture here and wanted us to feel American enough. And so I think that she was like, okay, we got to make spaghetti and let's make hamburgers and let's start cooking those kind of meals. And I think that, and I started feeling that as well too. I'm like, I don't want to be like, I need to be American and I need to like dress in the way that they dress and, and like speak the way they do and the lingo. And I need to eat these American foods and don't make me za'atar or lebni anymore for lunch. I want bologna sandwiches. And at the time, like, that's literally what my mom would make, like Capri Sun and like, bologna sandwiches. I'm like, this is what we eat here. That's what everybody's eating. And so this is what we have to do to kind of fit in, because when we first moved here, I went to Stout Middle School. So it was a lot more, American that were, at the school. And I'm like, I have to fit in. And so my mom just kind of fed into that, more and more. And then as we got older, my mom started finding a balance between the things that she was doing back in Africa and like assimilating here as well. And it's beautiful because she found this great way of just having convenient meals or convenient ways of doing things while still keeping our culture and our ethnicity and our religion and all of that still pure.
Yeah. You mentioned that you didn't know how to cook.
Yeah.
By the time you got married, but like, first of all, what did you like to do in your like teens?
Yeah. Well, growing up in Africa, my mom used to make everything from scratch, and so we didn't have the conveniences that we have here. We didn't have restaurants. We didn't have yogurt that you can buy in a tub. So my mom would literally like make her own yogurt from scratch, and she would make her own tomato paste from scratch. And so I just remember looking at her and just feeling like, wow, she's working so hard. I never want to do that. I never want to cook. I'm just going to hire someone to cook for me. So I wanted to be as far away from that as possible. But also growing up in Africa and seeing like my mom in the kitchen, I just remember the smells coming out of that kitchen, like freshly chopped parsley and sizzling garlic on the stovetop and rose water on top of fruit salad. Like I just remember those smells so distinctively. And so when we moved to the US, I thought I want to see like if we can still keep that. And for a while we didn't, like I said, but then eventually my mom started finding convenient ways of delivering still these like beautiful Mediterranean meals with those smells that smelled like home, but like much faster.
Yeah.
And so I started seeing her work less in the kitchen, and I started seeing like, okay, wait, I can help you a little bit. And she thought, you know what, you're very neat and you're very organized. So I think like, let's teach you how to wrap grape leaves. And I was so good at that. Like I could just wrap it like and I loved like plating things together. So I started helping my mom just a little bit like that, like making the strawberries look good on a plate, or wrapping the grape leaves, or just helping her stuff things. But I never actually like learned how to cook. I just was like busy hands in the kitchen with her. But I loved drawing and I loved playing tennis. And those were my two big hobbies as a teenager. So because I have this artistic side of me too, it's just, I love when things look visually beautiful. And I just loved when I would wrap grape leaves and everything would be same size, same shape, and that artistic background, I think, comes in hand too once I started Feel Good Foodie, because I started I was doing the photography for that. And
At the beginning.
yeah, exactly.
I would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Whoop. Whoop is a fitness wearable that measures the important vitals for your everyday health, from your sleep to your strain to your recovery. It can be the catalyst that you need to change your health and habits forever. At least that was the case for me. And because you're a listener to this podcast, Whoop wants to give you your first month for free. And to do that, you have to go to join.whoop.com/notfromhere to get started. And now, back to the episode. I mean, when I say I don't know how to cook, it means that, like, gun to my head,
Yeah.
I can maybe grill a steak. I'll make burgers.
Yeah.
That's my max. You
Yeah.
moving in with your husband,
Yeah.
what was your max?
I think it was fried eggs, probably.
Really?
I can make eggs. Yeah. I mean, I literally was like, I can make eggs, and I'm panicking right now. But the thing is, when we first got married, we lived in Dearborn, and where we lived, I was half a mile away from his mom and 1 mile away from my mom. And so we were spoiled. We literally had a takeout service any night we wanted. We'd go to his mom for one night. We'd take out from my mom another day. We'd make some sandwiches or eggs. And then I soon quickly realized within a few months, we moved to Arizona, and I thought, I need to learn how to cook. This is this is terrible. And so I slowly started to, just learn little by little. And we didn't have FaceTime at the time, but I would call my mom and I would say, okay, I need to learn how to make rozo shariye, like, rice and vermicelli. Can you teach me how to make this? And so I started learning one at a time. And I was like, hey, remember that one time you made like that one steak and it tasted, so what did you put in it? She'll go, oh, I actually put like 7 spice in it. I'm like, oh, I love that. And so I started getting these like little tidbits from her about like, oh, throw this 7 spice in here. Or when you make soup next time, throw lebne inside of it. And so I got all these like great tips from her. And then at the same time, Instagram started getting really big. And I thought, this is so much fun. Like, what's amaranth and what's quinoa and what's overnight oats? And so I started it started piquing my interest. And so I started learning about these like trendy, fun, healthy foods. And then I started like taking what my mom was doing and I started marrying the two. And before I knew it, I had a little one and I was like, the pressure was really on. I'm like, I want to give to my kids what my mom gave to us, these beautiful home cooked meals. But at the end of the day, I have a marketing job. I only have 30 minutes when I get home from work, and my husband is at work, and so he was in residency at the time. So I thought, there's no way I can do this the way my mom did it. So I started finding hacks and convenient ways of just getting things done so much faster, but with all the flavor.
How did you meet your husband?
We actually met at a wedding.
Okay.
What's interesting is we had seen each other a year before. There was a superintendent. It was a superintendent's dinner where you can bring your favorite teacher if you had like a 3.5 or higher. So his family was there, and then my family arrived late, and we're like, where do we sit? And my dad was like, oh, I recognize, that's Dr. Jawad. I recognize him. Let's sit at their table. So we sit at their table. We don't say anything to each other. A year later, we see each other at a wedding, and his mom was like, that's the girl that sat at our table. And she tells her son, you should go talk to her. We're like 19 at this point, but she said she was also in the Detroit Free Press yesterday, like, because she was second in her class. Like, go talk to her. She's smart and she's pretty. So he came to try to chat with me a little bit and say hi. And I was like, hi, I don't talk to boys, like, salam alaikum, don't talk to me, like, kind of thing. And so but then I was like, here's my email. You can have my email and we can, chat a little bit. So then he went to U of M and we became best friends. Yeah.
And then it was kind of from there. And you said that you were working corporate while he was in med school.
Yep.
How does that work out?
Oh, it was so difficult because when we first got married, he was still in med school for the last year that we got married. He was still in med school, and he was working night shifts, and he was moonlight. He was doing not night shifts yet because it was still med school, but he was working all the time. And I would come home at 6 o'clock. I was working in Troy, Michigan at the time. I would come home at 6 o'clock, and he would come home around the same time as well. We'd look at each other like, is your mom cooking? Or mom, like, where are we getting dinner from tonight? And so it was a lot of work. And so when we ended up moving to Arizona, we same thing as well. I was working in a marketing job there, and that's when he started his residency. And it was difficult, but we didn't have kids until 4 years after. And it was great because at that point I could start to I went part-time and I could slowly start to manage it.
Is there a conversation with your parents about, okay, I'm about to get married, but he's still in med school?
Yeah.
Like, how, like,
Absolutely.
we're like, if I want to get married, I need to have a plan set. I need to be working.
Yep.
Like, my fiance's parents or my wife's parents need to see me as someone that's, oh, he's there,
Yep.
kind of, before he could take my daughter.
Yeah.
Was there kind of a conversation like that for you?
I think there was just a lot of trust in who the family was and who he was as well, because we were friends for 6 years before any of this happened. And it was one of those things where we were just friends forever, and everyone's like, you guys are totally in love. And I'm like, no, we're not. He's just my friend. I don't like him like that. And I was in denial for so long. And he went away to med school and came back, and I was like, nope, we're just friends. And finally we did, we tried to stretch it out as long as possible too. Like, okay, let's do the tolbe, let's do the khutbeh, let's do the, stretch it out as much as possible. And then we figured in the end, because I was working and because we weren't going to start a family right away, we can make it work. And we knew that it would just be one more year before he was in residency, and it's a long process as well. It's such a long process to be a doctor, between med school, residency, fellowship. My husband also did a subspecialty as well because he's an extra specialized cardiologist. So it was a very, very long process. And what's funny is we went to Arizona and then we moved to Florida and then we moved to Massachusetts. And I just remember bouncing around because we got married in Dearborn, lived here for 8 months, and then moved around to 3 different states. And I kept remembering, okay, once we settle down, then I'll like get a real job that I really love. And I kept thinking one day I'll get a real job that I really love. And so I started Feel Good Foodie as a hobby. And I kept thinking that I'll just do this on the side. And one day when we really settle down, then I'll focus on getting that like dream job. And then I think one day in Massachusetts, it was like 2016. And I thought, wait a minute, like this is the job. What am I doing here? It took me 3.5 years to realize that. And I finally thought, this is the job. This is what I need to be doing.
Why would you start posting on Instagram in the first place?
I started posting to learn how to cook publicly because I was basically I had a personal page on Instagram and I would share pictures of my cute kids at the time and they would get hundreds of likes, and then I would share like a new food that I tried and nobody would like it. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what? There's other accounts out there. This is 2013.
Very
There's
early
other-
age.
Yeah, very early. And I'm like, there's other accounts that are just about food. Like I remember seeing like Healthy Foods Plus and, you know, things like that, or Learn to Cook. Like I just kept seeing these accounts and I thought, why don't I start one? And so I'm like, I want to start one because I'm really interested in this. It could be really fun. And I remember telling my husband, maybe one day I can write a book of some sort. And I was like, but I don't know what to write about, but I want to tell the world things. I have things to say and I want to teach people like how good food can be for your body and what it can do for you. And I just want to start. So I remember it was my birthday and my husband got me like 10 books. And he's like, it was a mixture of cookbooks and like nutrition books. And he's like, I don't know what you want to write about, but here's 10 books. Read them and start that page. He's like, I think you should call it Feel Good Foodie. So he came up with the name.
He came up with the
Yeah, he's like, you just have a feel good personality and you're just the biggest foodie I know. You just love food and have fun with it. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, but what if I run out of ideas? He's like, well, just like post. He goes, don't complicate it. Whatever you had for breakfast today, just post it. Whatever you had for lunch, just post it. He goes, don't complicate it. And what's interesting is, I was like, okay, I'm not going to complicate it, but I'm going to be consistent. In order to be consistent, I'll post 3 to 4 times a week. And what's interesting is now 11 years later, I still post 3 to 4 times a week. And I never stopped that. And I kept the goal in the beginning so approachable. It's like, I know I can't post 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Even 3 days was like, can I do that? And that when he broke it down to me, like, keep it easy and just inspire people. Like, today I learned, you know, what quinoa is. And I used it in tabbouleh instead of burghul. And, you know, just keep it simple like that. I think people will be really inspired. And that's what happened. It took a year, gained like 100,000 followers
in a year.
Yeah, it really skyrocketed. It was I think in the first 4 months it was like 400 or 500, and maybe it was 2 years that it took. I don't know, actually, it might have been a year. I'll have to get the timestamps, but it was really, really fast. Like in the beginning, he was like, don't worry, you only have 300 followers. It's great, you know, because my personal account had like 200. I'm like, what's all the 200 people there that are like, plus 100 random strangers? I don't know how they found me. But then what ended up happening was bigger accounts would be like, oh my gosh, I love those muffins that you shared. Can I post them on my account? Because the bigger accounts at the time wanted content.
Yes.
And I was creative and had content that was refreshing and different. So they would share it. And even just back then, if somebody shared your account, you can literally grow like 10,000 followers in a day. And that just snowballed.
Okay.
Yeah,
I see.
it was really interesting.
Did you feel pressure at one point, like with your schedule, be like, oh, I need to find something creative. It's getting stale. You know, every creative goes through that.
Yeah.
You know, like
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
posting the same thing. Like I posted a salad last week. Why would someone want a salad this week?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I got into a rut sometimes when I would do that. And I think whenever that happened, I would just tell myself, I would just stop and say, okay, take the pressure off. And what's funny is whenever I felt that way, I would just grab magazines and like, okay, what are people doing? I would go to a farmer's market. I would tell my husband, let's go out to eat. Like, let's go somewhere new that we've never been to before. And before I knew it, like the inspiration just came. And I think, you know, I may have taken a week off like here and there, but it's very rare that I even took a week off. I just kept going because I was always consuming so much content too. I would read magazines, go to restaurants, like I said, and just read articles constantly. And I'm like, oh, I saw this really cool like lemon hack of like how to squeeze lemons. And I want to try it. And I think the way I started to get out of my recipe rut was I would think about, well, what can I teach people outside of the recipes? So I would focus for a while on ingredients and like, here, this is really cool. You can add strawberries to your pancakes. Did you know that? Like instead of adding chocolate chips, and just even as small as that, like it started out as like, we're changing our pancake recipe by adding
Okay.
strawberries to eventually, like, I'm switching quinoa from bulgur to quinoa, for example.
Yeah.
So, and then one day started making cauliflower crust pizza. Who knew you can make pizza from cauliflower crust? But there is so much inspiration out there on Instagram too, with people sharing different things. And I thought I wanted to be vegan for 1 minute too at the point, and I started just making lots of like different dishes and
That's
vegan.
really shifting away from your roots.
Yeah, I was like, I think I can be vegan. I'm like, you can make vegan cheese, and but yeah, it lasted literally a minute, and I
Yeah.
decided no, that's not who I am.
I feel like, I mean, everyone that scrolls through your page would see very colorful, very bright. You're always smiling, but there's a dark side of social media that a lot of people won't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been doing this for 13 years. You've had problems, probably family problems. You've had personal problems, just between you and yourself. What is the dark side of social media that we don't see?
I think it's the expectations that people have of you when you are a public figure, when you have 4 million followers. I think that there's this side where people think that you're not reading the comments, for example, or they think that they can attack you because all of a sudden having millions of followers makes you tougher skin. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have feelings, and I actually read all my comments. I read them. I reply to as many of them as possible, and I do get hurt by that. And I think that as big as you get, as long as you've been doing it, as many brutal comments as you get, it still hurts. I got 9 raving reviews. My cookbook came out yesterday. I got 9 raving reviews, 5-star reviews, glowing. One person gave me a 1-star and said, all the recipes have the same spice. And it's not true. And they were unimaginative. And that hurt so much. Like 1 out of 10 ratings already is this just mean comment. That's not true at all. And so I feel like that's the dark side of it, is that people think that they can attack you because you're big and you have like you're a public figure, and they think that because you're in a public sphere, anything goes. And it's really hard to see that, and it never gets easier. And with every comment, I just have to, try to like swallow it and just try to, figure out how to react. And sometimes I like just block them, and sometimes I hide, and sometimes I try to say something back, and most of the time I just kill them with kindness back,
Is there one comment that you remember that really hurt you?
I think it was probably during the whole Gaza, everything happening with Gaza, and me standing up for what's going on and posting about that. And I think the names that I was called, those were the most hurtful in my entire time on Instagram. Because when you would, and I know that a lot of that was bots, but when I would scroll up, I would see, man, actually Nancy and I have been talking about food for 7 years. And Nancy asked me about this pasta recipe, and Nancy asked me about this oatmeal recipe, and Nancy loved my kids in that one video, and now Nancy thinks that I'm X, Y, and Z because I'm sitting here supporting this.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that hurts the most, is because, and I don't share politics most of the time, but this is,
It's
as we know,
beyond.
it's beyond that. And that hurts a lot too. And I think that with some people you share too much, other people they think you're sharing too little, and that's been the toughest part of my career, I think, is navigating this whole crisis that's happening, and how to handle that, and what people think of you regardless what you say.
Because we see a lot of public figures, I'm just going to call them, people with millions that didn't speak up, that like chose to remain silent, and those will get the heat from the Arab that have been following them, that have been supporting them. So now you're saying that you said you started since 2013. This has been the most hate you've ever got.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's from both sides, honestly, because one side will tell me I'm not speaking enough. Yeah, and in the last month I haven't spoken about it. I actually haven't, because I have a focus of launching this cookbook and staying positive and being the feel-good person that I am, and staying true to my brand, and I haven't shared about it. And you'll get negativity from both sides because of that. And that's been the worst. That's been the most hurtful, I think, of anything. Someone says they don't like my face, they don't like my hair, they don't like I'm using the cumin in too many recipes. I think that at the end of the day, all of that, I can brush it off. And I think when it comes to, this matter, it's just bigger than all of us. It's changed all of us. The last 7 months have just completely changed us all.
Yeah. And what's sad is you share, let's say you posted a video on Instagram that was a minute, and then you posted a YouTube video that was 7 minutes. Out of the 7 days, people only really saw what you were doing for these 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And then the rest of the time, they don't know. Like, a lot of people are really consuming all this content and they're really hurt by it.
Yeah.
You know, but you go back to the word expectation, and
Yeah.
they just want more from you, and it is frustrating.
Yeah, they expect you to fit a certain mold. I think sometimes
that they want
that
to
they
see
want,
from you.
and yeah, exactly. And so they'll say, "Hey, wait, I'm not following you for politics." Even just like I'll get if I share my outfits, for example, I'll get more, like I'll probably get 10 times as many clicks on like sharing a T-shirt of where my T-shirt is from than sharing a pasta recipe. But then one day I'll share like, "Hey guys, I know you asked me about this T-shirt, and so here, I just want to share the link." And someone will be like, "I'm not following you for fashion." I'm like, and so I'm like, "I'm sorry, but literally, like, these are my DMs are flooded because people want to know what the shirt is."
People are too bored, I feel.
Yeah, and I think that they expect you, and it's I think it's what I found too is that there's actually, they call it something. It's like, what about me? It's a what about me like scenario where people think that everything they consume, they need to fit into it, and so it's like, you know, it's a 10-bean soup recipe. Well, I don't like 10 beans. Well, it doesn't have to be for you.
Keep scrolling.
Yeah, people try to fit everything into them. Like, if you eat gluten-free, well, do I have to be gluten-free? I'm like, no, you don't have to be gluten-free. I'm not gluten-free. And,
Wow.
and so a lot of people try to fit everything that they see on social media to their life. And if it doesn't, it almost bothers them and they get upset by that. And they have to realize that not every message is for everybody. Whether I'm talking about my shoes or about Palestine or about my pasta recipe.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel like you mentioned your kids a lot. I mean, and your kids are starting to get close to the teenage years, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Social media is kind of interconnected with kids nowadays, and it's mom that's the most famous in the house, right? So how do you kind of, because you know like the pros and the cons, and you take your business very professionally.
Yeah.
You know, your pages, this is food.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing. I'm teaching people how to cook. How do you kind of tell them to like back down, or this, you can consume this much rather than that much?
Yeah, well, my kids aren't allowed on social media yet. And
Okay.
so what we do is, my daughter's only 13 and my son is 11. And my daughter was the second to last person in her school, in her class, to get a phone. She just turned 13 and just got a phone. And so now that she has a phone, she has just a few apps on there that I allow, and she doesn't have social media on there. But what I do is I actually will save things for them all the time, because I want them to know about the trends. And I want them, you know, there was just even like funny things, silly things, like even like sometimes if I feel like there's a trend or there's cool videos that their classmates are going to be talking about, I save those videos. And like on Sundays we have like a TikTok day where I'm like, here's like the best of the week, and I will share everything with them that I think is appropriate for them. And so I think that being able to monitor and scan and just file down what you want your kids to see, I think is appropriate at a time. And sometimes I'll show them something that's not appropriate even. And, you know, it's like a little kid that said the F word. And I'm like, I'll show that to them still, because they hear that word at school all the time. And I'll say, okay, I'm showing you this. I know it's inappropriate, but it's a really funny video that got 20 million likes and people are going to be talking about it at school. But I want you to know, even though this is funny, I don't want you to be saying this. And so sometimes it's just like showing them reality and just being really honest with them, because they're going to see it eventually. And so my whole rule with social media is, when you look at I watched The Social Dilemma, and I was kind of traumatized by that, and just working in the field as well, and knowing how advertising works and knowing how things are targeted and how addictive all of it is. I take all of that into consideration with my kids. And I know that, you know, the owners of Facebook and Instagram, and so their own kids are not even on the platforms. And so that alone tells you something so much about it. And so my daughter and I have a rule that she's allowed to get Pinterest. So she just got her phone. So I told her in 4 months, she can have Pinterest. We'll start there and just kind of show her how to use it. And then I told her when she's 14, she can have Instagram and follow 12 people. And, you know.
Really?
Yeah. And so we kind of have this, my kids went to school, my kids went to a Montessori school. And so it's this whole expectation of like, you have expectations of, at this age, you do this. And at this age, you do this. And so my son, who's 2 years younger than her, is like, it's not fair. Like, you know, she gets to watch 2 hours of iPad on weekends and I'm only getting an hour and a half. And I'm like, well, when you're her age, you get that too. And so, and same thing with like bedtime. Like they don't have the same bedtime because they're different ages. And so same thing with social media. When you're this age, you get a phone. 3 to 4 months later, you get one app. 3 to 4 months later, I give you another one. When you're 14, you get this. And then when she's 15, I think I'm just gonna like, you know.
So you're very strict.
Oh yeah, I'm super strict about it. And I think that when it came down to the pandemic, my kids had never used iPads. It was so strict, like 20 minutes on a weekend. And once the pandemic happened, my kids were 7 and 9, and it was really hard to avoid. And that's when they started really getting the iPad time. And there was a lot of mom guilt for that, but at the same time, it was reality. And so my kids were watching all these shows, and, you know, I would monitor what they're watching, but that's when they really started watching. And it got to a point where it was kind of bad. But now what I tell them is I say, hey, you can go on your iPad. My daughter has a phone now for 30 minutes. FaceTime your friends. You can check your messages, text whatever you have, like do all of that on weekdays because it's realistic, you know? And my daughter is using her phone more than 30 minutes for sure. But we try to limit it as much as possible. And then on weekends, I'm like, watch a show. Like you can watch whatever you're watching on Netflix. Like that's appropriate for your age. And so we try to have these boundaries because, and I think it was because it's the Montessori way that when the kids went to school that way, and so much of it is about play and interacting in real life than about that. And so my kids will get at me when I'm literally at the dinner table and responding to a comment, which we have a no phone rule between my husband and I at the dinner table. And sometimes I'll post something and I'm like, oh my gosh, someone said this, and I'll grab my phone, and or somebody will buzz me like something happened with you're getting negativity on this post, and I'll jump on my phone right away, and my kids will be like, tisk, 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 you know? So they'll call me out on it all the time whenever, or if I'm at my son's soccer game and he catches me on my phone for a second, he's like, you were not looking? I'm like, it's boring. It's 1 hour. And like, it's getting more fun now because he's 11, but this was when he was like 9. I'm like, it is so boring. You're literally
They can
defense.
barely kick the ball.
I'm like, you're in defense. You're just sitting there. You're not even doing anything. Like you're just defending, quote unquote. And yeah, I grabbed my phone, and so they will call me out on it. So we try to have these boundaries, I think, because I just feel like I think it's important to have, and I think that social media is sucking so much life out of all of us. And I'm addicted to my phone, and I'm afraid to admit it, but I actually am addicted to my phone and to social media. And when it buzzes, even when I'm driving, when it buzzes, I'm like, who buzzed? Like we all are. And so
you never got really numb to it.
Yeah.
Even after this long
I mean, yeah. And what do you mean by numb? Like
خلص whatever.
About like
the phone buzzing or the messages coming in or whatever.
And I have certain things that I don't allow. Like I don't do the notifications for Instagram. It's too much. But if my phone buzzed, I'm like, who texted me? What happened? You know, and it's still something that when I post within 10 minutes, I'm like, how many likes did it get? How many, an hour later, how many likes did that get? How many swipe ups or how many links did that get? And it's addicting.
Are you tired?
Yeah, I'm exhausted. I really am. I think I've always said this. I think I'm like the hardest working person I know because I don't stop. I have these goals. I have these dreams, and I just go after them. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I don't sacrifice too much for my family. So I don't sleep a lot. And so, yeah, I'm tired, and I'm look forward to sleeping after this book launch.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is that you have such a busy lifestyle, and your husband is a doctor. So that says just everything about his lifestyle. So I would expect if you told me you have the mom is a social media figure and she has millions of subscribers or followers, and then the husband is a doctor, it means when your kids are 5 and you have work to do, you're just going to turn on the TV and khalas, just watch TV, let me work. But it's we almost never did that. And my husband would beg me sometimes, like, can we just let them watch TV? And so we would use it in like, but if we ever needed it, like especially if I had a meeting that would show up all of a sudden and it's like the kids are home from school, if I put them in front of that TV, it was dead silence because they never get it. So when they're in front of it, it was so quiet. And so what I tried to do was I tried to have boundaries between work and play. And so when my kids are at school, I have a good chunk of like 5-6 hours, for example, when they're at school. And I didn't start Instagram I didn't really start taking it as seriously until they were in school age. And so during that time, that's my work time. And so I treat it very professionally so that I'm not, feeding a kid and taking a meeting. Like it's work time right now, and I have no time at all for anything else that's house related. I'm not doing the laundry at that time. I'm not, taking things to the kids' school and running errands or anything like that. It's just work time. And so once I pick up the kids, I did a lot of house stuff with them, and that's the best way to do it. So
they would literally do laundry with me. And my son started folding his laundry when he was 7 years old because we would always do it with me. We'd sing songs, doing it together. So that's how I was able to do it, was that I spent time with my kids while doing house chores. Like that's when I would get around to doing the dishes and grocery shopping and things like that. And so I involved them in these daily things that I had to get done anyways. And it wasn't work related, but it was home related. And then when I needed it too, like I was not afraid to have a babysitter. I've never had a nanny, but during the pandemic, I ended up hiring a teacher because I was my kids and I were not going to survive that, the pandemic. Like having to school them during that time was really tough.
Yeah, it
and
would
so,
have been difficult.
yeah.
Do you experience mom guilt at all?
Oh yeah, I really do. And there's a lot of that happens, especially when I travel. And I travel a lot for work because I go on these conferences and blogger retreats and food shows. And so I try to limit them as much as possible. But whenever I go, it always feels, and they're with family. I'm lucky enough that I have my brother-in-law who lives here and can drive 2 hours, and he works from home and is not married and can be with my kids. And he's like the best second father to them in a way. And I'm lucky enough to have that. But at the same time, there's so much mom guilt, and then, but when I come home from wherever I am and my kids are like, oh my gosh, I saw you on TV, or, oh my gosh, it's so cool that like you went and did like your photo shoot in New York for 6 days. And like, I saw the behind the scenes. It was so cool. Dad showed it to us. And when they see all of that, I come back, they're so proud of me. And I think about, you know what? They're getting to see their mom becoming a successful person. And in their eyes, their mom is accomplishing things. Their mom is not going somewhere to just hang out on a beach. And that's fine, to do that and to take a break. But sometimes the mom guilt gets to be so much that I cancel trips. I was supposed to go to Paris a few weeks ago. And I was like, there's no way I can go because I know when I come back, I'm going to be 10 times more stressed with the cookbook coming out and not having seen my kids. And I think I'm just going to be a mean person. Like, and I just make these decisions where I'm like, I can't go on this trip because I don't need to go on this trip. And so that creeps in a lot into your work. And I found that the best medicine for that is to really just try to have boundaries of like what you can and can't do. So even one of my biggest mom guilts is not being able to volunteer enough at school. And I want to be able to do that, for example. And it's so hard. And I'm like, okay, well, I will volunteer once every month or 2 months, and that's good enough for me. And some of these moms can volunteer every week, but I can't. And
do they ask you about it, your kids? Do they make it better or worse?
No, they're so understanding, alhamdulillah.
Okay.
They're so understanding about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had to really learn how to say no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I felt that every single time that I've said no, honestly, there's 10 yeses that came back afterwards that were better. And that's even, especially with even like working with brands. Sometimes I would get a brand, like I remember at Christmas time, all the brands come at you during the holidays. And I remember it was like a pre-made pie crust, which is fine, but it didn't have the best ingredients. I'm like, no one's gonna know. Everyone buys pre-made pie crust. But when I buy it, I make sure that I'm buying like
Something
all
you would
natural
use.
ones. Yeah, and that's not the brand that I would buy. And I remember saying no to it and it being so much money, like more money than, that I normally would make on a campaign. And I said no. And 3 other things came that made up for that. And they were so much better and such a better fit for me. And so I've had to, it's tough, but I remind myself of these stories every time I say no, that something bigger and better sometimes comes along.
There's a lot of moms that work that want to also spend time with their kids, but they feel like they can't. And as someone that's been doing it for a long time, what are some like standards that you can just throw out at us that you do that work?
I think one of the ones is to do chores with them. I think that's one way to spend more time with your kids. Like if you have to go grocery shopping, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of them that I'd like to do, like I mentioned, is doing chores with them. So involving them in things like that. And that includes cooking as well. And so if I'm not cooking for my website, I have 2 days where I cook for my website. One of them is a recipe testing day where I bring in a kitchen assistant and we test 8 recipes for the website. And then another day is filming day where I actually do my hair and my makeup and I get in front of the camera and I film 3 different recipes. It could be anything. And so there's always tons of food left over from that. But on other days where I don't have food left over, I involve my kids in that. And so I think that involving your kids in everyday chores, my kids make their own lunch boxes now. My daughter even makes my husband's lunches now.
Wow.
Which is, yes. because I was making them for him and he would forget them. And so I was like, I'm not making you lunch anymore because you keep forgetting it. And so now my daughter makes it for him. And I'm like, why not? So she makes it for herself and for my husband and my son as well. And so she's taken that over and that's her chore now.
So
And
she's not gonna call you when she gets married.
no, she's ready. Not even my son is not even gonna call me. My son can cook as well, which is so amazing to hear at this age. And I think that's because I empowered them. And it was hard in the beginning because they make mistakes. My daughter's still super messy when she cooks and she bakes. Like she literally just makes a huge mess in the kitchen. So I think as much as possible, I think empowering your kids and including them in these household chores, I think makes it feel really good as well. I think a second thing would be don't be afraid to ask for help. And I think that could be help with your business or help with your home or help with the kids. I think there's no shame in like getting help with someone to pick up your kids from school. And a lot of people, might have family. I don't have family next to me to pick up my kids from school, but I rely on neighbors like 2 days a week to pick up my son, for example, because those days I just have a little bit longer time and then I help with the other days and pick up their son. So don't be afraid to ask for help as much as possible. And I would also say like give yourself some grace because I think that an hour, a true good hour with your kids, like of actually like uninterrupted time, face to face, eye contact, making meaningful connections, whatever it is, reading a book together, like cooking together, doing whatever it is 10 times better than spending all day with them when you're half sitting there, half not. And so I start thinking about this like power hour that I have with my kids every day. I'm like, I just need a power hour, like because we're so busy all the time. And most of the time that power hour comes at bedtime. And that's just what it is. And especially now with my cookbook and a tour and traveling so much, I've just been like, okay, what's a power hour? And we read together at night, we help with like bedtime routine and, tuck in the kids at night. And I still, with my son, for example, one thing that I do with him is I give him like 3 words of good things that he is that day. And sometimes he has the most terrible days and he's throwing tantrums and he's awful to his sister and awful to me and all the things. But at the end of the day, try really hard to find 3 good things that he was that day, whether he was helpful or whether he was prompt in the morning, whatever it was. And it just ends the day so well, so that power hour, trying to find it, whether it's in that morning, afternoon, after school, at the end of the day at bedtime, like just try to find that one meaningful hour of the day. And that's what the kids are going to remember. They're not going to remember that it was 5 hours or 30 minutes or an hour. They'll remember the one thing that happened there, that you played Scrabble. Sometimes literally we start Scrabble for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, I got to go. I can't even finish this. But they'll remember that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it is. So those would be like my 3 tips.
When does Yumna take time for herself?
At the gym.
Really?
Yeah. So I work out 6 days a week. I go to the gym and I put my phone away. I don't even answer it. Like I look at my watch and if it's the school and maybe if it's my husband, I'll answer. My husband never calls me during work. So if he calls, I'll answer. And if it's school, other than that, I don't even answer it. And that's my hour of just like letting it go, relaxing, power. There's like, do high intensity interval training, do some cardio, do some yoga, different types of workouts.
And is that enough for you, you feel?
Yeah, I feel like it's really good for me, and I enjoy that time. I enjoy that time a lot. And I would also say that recently I've just been like doing more like self-care at night, where like I'm taking time to put on my lotions and things and hair stuff. And I feel like that little half hour at night after the kids go to bed has been good for me. And I turn on like a little Netflix and just kind of like prep my stuff, put on the masks, and like try to do that a few days a week. And I feel like that feels good. So it's something in the morning. I work out as soon as I drop off the kids at school. So it sets my day right. And then whenever I can, 3 to 4 times a week, I have this like self-care night where I'm just like masks and, like actually taking time to put on lotion on my dry hands that have been washing dishes all day.
Where does the idea for a cookbook come? Because here's my philosophy. I have not seen a cookbook in so long.
Yeah.
I maybe see them if I'm like at a furniture store and they have it as a prop on the table. For real. Like you go to West Elm, you'll probably see a cookbook on the table. But like in a house, I don't even remember. Yeah. So it's like, what's the need for a cookbook? I mean, yours looks fantastic, but where does be like,
Yeah, why do that?
Yeah.
So I actually wrote a cookbook for 2 reasons. The first reason I wrote the book is because the way my mom cooked growing up was by instinct. And so she would just throw a handful of this and a pinch of that. And she was just a magician, I felt, in the kitchen. And so I always wanted to demystify that and make it measurable and tangible. And I wanted something that I can refer to. And so I started spending time with her over the phone and whenever I would visit her. And pretty soon I started learning that, a pinch for my mom was really like a tablespoon. And a cup was really more like finjan ahwe or finjan chai. It's like literally a coffee cup or a teacup. And I started thinking like, oh, wait, like the teacup is actually a cup and a half. That's what my mom's been calling a cup all this time. It's actually a cup and a half. And so I wanted to demystify that and make it actionable, tangible for myself, for my kids, for generations to come. And so that was one of the purposes of doing the book. And the second one was my community has actually been asking me for it for so many years. And I think it's because they've enjoyed the recipes online. I have 1,250 free recipes online. But at the same time, a lot of people just want to hold something in their hand. They want to flip a page, bookmark it in their kitchen, and come back to their favorite pancake recipe that they make every Sunday morning. And it just makes it so, and they know they can trust my recipes, and they want to be able to have them in a book so they can bookmark them more easily and come back to them. So a lot of it was, I never thought I would do one, and I'm like, who buys cookbooks anymore?
Yeah.
But seeing how much, and I thought one day I would do one, and I've actually over time was slowly collecting my own makeshift. It was called Yumna's Yummy Yum Yum Project, Yumna's Yummy Yum Yum Cookbook. It's what it was called. And I would just collect things. I would write them down for my mother-in-law or for my mom as I was doing things. And hearing from my audience that they actually wanted a cookbook was just illuminating. And so then I had this agent reach out to me and she's like, how are you not doing a cookbook already? You have so many followers. And I'm like, no, nobody wants a book from me. And she literally chased me. I love her. She chased me for like 2 years and she's like, you need a cookbook. You need to do it. You're going to kill it. You're going to do amazing. And I kept telling her, I don't have time for a book. I don't have time for a book. And she said something that finally stuck to me. She said, Yumna, nobody wants a cookbook. Nobody wants a book from somebody who has time to write a book. They want a book from that person who's too busy to write a book. And I was like, you're right. When I have time, when I'm 50 and 45 and 50, am I even going to be interesting then? Like, who am I? Who am I going to be at 45 that somebody would want a book from me? She goes, people want a book from somebody who doesn't have time to write a book because those are the most interesting people to tell a story.
That's so interesting.
I know. And I love that. And I was like, that's it. Where do I sign?
How do you make the recipes in the book? Because they're very simple.
Yeah.
Like not too many ingredients.
Yeah.
And you said you have 1,200 on your website. How do you
Yeah.
make the ones in the book special?
So what I did in the book was I wanted it to be a tool that people can use to cook anything. So when I looked at the breakfast chapter, for example, I realized I needed a pancake recipe, a French toast recipe, an oatmeal recipe, an egg recipe, omelet, etc. So how I started it was I kind of divided it into these categories because I wanted the book to feel evergreen, that anytime I need a pancake recipe, I can flip to this page. But what I did was I made them special by adding Mediterranean ingredients to them. So pancakes will have rose water. The oatmeal will have dates in it. The French toast will have pistachios in it. And all throughout the book, you'll see that too. It's a very simple, chicken recipe. Another one that's in the oven. It's a very simple, like ground beef recipe. But every single one just has just this unique Mediterranean ingredient that makes it so special. And so in the book, I talk about 8 Mediterranean staples, and they're sprinkled throughout the book of, how to add them in there just to make something feel like unique and give it a little twist.
You said that you learned cooking from your mom. Does she
Yeah.
criticize your food at all?
Oh yeah, she does. Yeah, she'll definitely criticize my food, and so does my dad. Actually, is a great cook as well. And I have in my book my baba's hummus recipe. And I said every time I make hummus, I said my dad doesn't measure everything, obviously. So depends on like some lemons are more juicy than others, some garlic is more potent than others. So he'll just do it and he'll taste it 12 times before it's final, like typical Arab dad.
Yeah.
And then he'll know it's exactly right. So every time I make it, he'll be like, La baba, you need more salt, you need more lemon, and he'll do this. And so the final iteration that ended up in my book is as close as possible as I can get to it. But I guarantee you, if I make it next time, he'll probably still criticize it too. But my mom overall is like super proud of me. And
Do they understand the magnitude
Oh, they really
of
do.
what you built?
They really do. They're so impressed by it. And what's interesting is when I first graduated from college, I got a job in Troy, Michigan at a music company. And it was really cool. It was like a music distribution company. And I went into this like management training program. So as part of this management training program, you got to learn 10 different departments at the company over like a 10-month period. And every month you would spend in different places. And one of the months I was basically working at Walmart packing boxes for CDs. And I learned a ton. Like I learned more working at Walmart than I ever did. And my dad was like, Baba Shuhaida, you like, why are you working at Walmart? Like, he was like so like ashamed. I'm like, Baba, I have a corporate job, but like, you need to go to the field. This is how you learn. And so he was just like, I don't know about this. You're working at Walmart. I'm like, I'm not a Walmart employee. There's nothing wrong with that. But like, he was just saw, I graduated top of my class. I went to University of Michigan Business School, which is #1 in the country, and so he was so confused by that. And so over time, but he was really happy when I first started my own business, because he always thought like, you be your own boss, and that's the best thing that you could do, because that's what he does as well. So that's when
What
he
does he do?
finally got it. My dad's a diamond dealer in
Okay.
Africa. Yeah,
Okay,
like a
okay.
lot of Lebanese people in Africa as well. Yeah.
Okay. And then what's your relationship like with back home, with
Yeah.
Lebanon?
Oh, it's a very strong relationship. My mom and my dad both have a lot of family there, and we were fortunate when in 97 my dad bought an apartment in Lebanon, and so we still have it now. And now that I have my own kids, I haven't gone in the last 12 years as much. I've been maybe 3 times since I had my kids, but before that we used to spend every single summer there, and it was amazing. And so I would go back, eat the food, practice my Arabic, talk to my cousins, hang out with everyone, and it just humbles you. It just makes you appreciative so much of your homeland and where you're from.
Because that's a big part of the cookbook
Yeah.
too, Lebanese recipes.
Absolutely.
And I was interested to know what your relationship is with back home, because I feel like a strong relationship with back home makes you want to spread the culture.
Yeah.
And that happens through the cookbook.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like Yumna is Feel Good Foodie, but Yumna is also Lebanese that is dishing out these modern Lebanese. Like, it's weird. It's Manaish Zaatar, but
Yeah.
there's also like a modern twist to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's scrambled eggs, but then you make it into something else
Yeah.
as well. So how important, like, was it in the back of your head, like, no, I want this to be Lebanese. I want to cater.
Yeah.
I want to push out the Lebanese culture in this cookbook.
I think it was a secondary note,
Okay.
because it's my first cookbook. I wanted it to appeal to the masses, and I wanted it to feel really approachable. So the only true Lebanese recipes that I included were recipes that are already on my website, that have thousands of 5-star ratings on my website, and they're more mainstream recipes. So tabbouleh, fattoush, shawarma, and hummus, for example, and baba ghanoush. So those are the recipes that I feel like,
Not my Baba's Ghanoush.
and not my baba's ghanoush, exactly. I have my baba's hummus and not my baba's ghanoush, exactly. So I think that those are the ones that I focused on mostly, because I wanted it to feel super approachable. And my whole thing with this first book was that I wanted it to appeal to the masses, and I didn't want to alienate, anybody to feel like, oh no, because if I have a true Lebanese cookbook, there needs to be a wara anab recipe in there.
Right.
There needs to be kusa mahshi in there. Like, you have to have these authentic Lebanese recipes, or fatteh, that we expect to see in those books. And I knew that if I did that, I would alienate people who were just kind of a little overwhelmed by how long they would take, or finding the ingredients, or finding the right squash, for example.
Yeah.
But I would absolutely love to do, I think a second cookbook is in me, depending on how well this one does. The second book is in me, and it would be, Lebanese night dinner or something like that. And it would be broken down into different types of food. So you have the 30-minute Lebanese meals, but you also have everything stuffed. I would do like a stuffed chapter, like all
Yeah.
the things we stuff, because we can literally do 15 different recipes that are
Absolutely.
stuffed. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So different salads and things like that. And so I would love to do that as a second iteration. But this one is not a pure Lebanese book.
If you're home alone and all the time in the world, you have full energy,
Yeah.
and you want to make one dish that's your favorite, what is it?
If I have all the time,
All the time that you want, you get, and
Oh.
you have full energy. It's not like you're in a hurry, or you just want to make something to sit on the couch.
yeah,
You want to enjoy your meal. What's your favorite dish to do?
I would make wara anab, stuffed grape leaves.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also every person in my family, my husband, my 2 kids, it's all of our favorites. And my kids get mad at me because I make it 4 times a year, but I'm like, that's how much, if I make it,
Only?
yeah, I don't make it enough. And what's interesting is it was my daughter's birthday in February, and I overheard her talking, and I came back from a conference, and I had another thing going on like the following week. I was super busy, and I overheard her talking to my niece, and my niece asked her, what are you doing for your birthday tomorrow? She said, oh, my mom is making steak and mashed potatoes. And my niece goes, wait, is that your favorite food? She goes, no, it's not my favorite. What anab is my favorite, but I'm not going to ask my mom to make it because it's Tuesday night and she's super busy. And I overheard this, and I was like, I will challenge accepted. You are getting what I'm up tomorrow. And honestly, it was so difficult. Like, and I had to cancel 2 meetings and I did it. And I don't do that often because I'm like, no, it's work time.
Yeah.
But that day I'm like, it's my daughter's birthday and she was so considerate. And literally I have a video of her on Instagram jumping for joy, seeing that pot of what and
Wow.
smelling it. And it was just like, I will always remember that. And those are the moments where I'm like, whatever I have mom guilt, like I make up for it with that hour of power. Like that hour of power that day was when she opened up that pod and we sat down and we actually ate in the nice dining room because I'm like, it's your birthday. We do have steak and mashed potatoes, but we also have varanam today. And so we sat down, we ate together, and it was beautiful.
So I took a look at the cookbook. It's the recipes are very easy, and like I told you, I do not know how to do anything. Okay, and my sister just got married. She moved out. My mom lives in Lebanon. Like I'm like home alone.
Yeah.
Where do I start if I want something easy and I work maybe I get home at like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. every day, and I need to eat that one meal. What do you recommend?
That one meal for dinner?
What do you recommend?
I would recommend the 1 skillet chicken and zucchini because I think that the hardest part about this recipe is chopping the onions and the zucchini. But if you can replace the zucchini with any vegetable. It's a pound of any vegetable you want or a mix of vegetables. And so you can actually buy some of those things pre-cut already and buy cubed chicken. And literally everything goes in a pan. You mix it all together. But what makes it really special is I actually put capers inside of that sauce. So it's chicken and zucchini, but there's capers in there and garlic. And so the meal just feels like a restaurant quality meal, but you literally threw it together in a pan.
Okay.
And if you have them already chopped, I think it would take you 12 minutes.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. If you have them already, the chopping is the hardest part of my book. And when you look at the prep, all the recipes are 30 minutes or less. All of them are 10 ingredients or less. And the only exception to that would be if things are more than 10 ingredients, it's because they have a couple extra spices. Like shawarma has like 7 spices to it, and I list them all.
That's an ingredient for you.
It's an ingredient because
Okay.
it's 7 different ones that make up the shawarma spice. But if you have it, you replace it. And I think the hardest prep time in my book is just chopping things because I use a lot of fresh vegetables. And you can definitely buy things pre-chopped. I think that saves a lot of time.
I'm going to try it. I love 1 skillet or like 1 pan meals.
Yeah, it
The
makes
best.
it makes it so easy. And then I think too, once you know this, you're like, oh wait, I can make this now with beef next time, or I can switch out the zucchini to peppers or to mushrooms, and I don't want to do capers this time. And so that's what I love about this book. It actually empowers you to learn how to do these simple meals, and then knowing how to switch them out really easily, like skip the peppers this time or skip the capers. And then,
You know what's very interesting is I think it was last week where you were unboxing the box of books for the first time. And I mean, a lot of people, I mean, they get to a certain point where, okay, they'll release like a product to sell to people. And you'll never really know really if the person's doing it from their heart or not. But you open the box, I'm watching this video, you open the box and then it just looks like an ordinary video. Okay, Yuna's about to show us her new book.
Yeah.
And then you crack up, you start crying.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, like she spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
She put in like she really put her heart into this. Someone to break down on camera when they're not really supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt like that's a story in of itself.
Yeah.
Like
I had to edit it out. There was so much crying in there, and I had to just like stop the video.
Why did you cry?
I think it was just how much went into it, knowing that it was 2.5 years in the making, and creating 100 new recipes. I mean, 25 are from the book, from the website, but just creating 100 new ones, and just the expectation that people have of me, and wanting to make sure that like it doesn't disappoint. Like, so I've always had really high standards for myself, and just like being vulnerable and putting myself out there and just asking people to buy something and just not knowing how people are going to react to it. It was just, it's like almost like a sense of relief. Like, oh my gosh, like I just remember it's like finally here. Like it's like birthing a child, and it just felt like an exhale to me. And I think that cry was an exhale. Like, wow, it's here,
Yeah, like I think if anyone was like just doubted that she has 1,200 recipes, she probably took 30 of them, slapped them in a book, and she just wants to sell it. No, like that tells a story there.
Yeah.
Like, no, like this person really put, like you're really passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
You know?
And every recipe in there, I really thought about like one advice that I would give to like any new entrepreneurs is like thinking about who your audience is. And so when I was writing this book, I thought of it separately than who my audience is for example, the website. But I also, for this book, I thought my sisters were my audience. So my sisters are 2 years younger than me and 4 years younger than me. And I thought, would Rawan make this recipe? Would Zainab make this recipe? I would I would be testing it. And I remember making something one day and I'm like, this is so good. But then I thought, Rawan's never going to make this. Like Zainab's never going to make this. And so I would go back to the drawing board and okay, let me come up with something else. Let me do something a little bit easier. Let me do something a little bit differently. So these recipes where I needed them to be easy and quick, but I also wanted them to be flavorful. And so I put so much into them and testing and retesting. And I actually had a second person test all 125 recipes with me. And then a third person test 70 of the recipes that I was like a salad, I didn't have her retest, but I had her literally test 70 of the 125 because I wanted to make sure that there was no mistakes. And me and the other person who tested all 125, we made them multiple times. And so thinking about how many times I've made these meals and corrected errors and read the manuscript. I've read that manuscript 57 times, I think. And so there's so much that goes into it. And I don't think people realize it. And the book is $32 now, and it's on sale on Amazon for like $25. They'll do different sales, different points. And people are like, wow, why is it so expensive? First of all, I don't set the price.
I thought it was really cheap, to be honest.
Yeah, first of all, I don't set the price, but I'm just like, do you understand what went into it? Like, I just, there's so much that went into it. And I think that people are like, wow, it's, they look at the price point, and I understand. I don't take that lightly at all. Buying anything these days, it's, it's something that hard-earned money. But I think about like, there's so much value in that book because I thought about what kind of book would you want in your kitchen? Because so many people now are buying the book for the first time ever, buying a book. People are telling me left and right, I've actually never bought a cookbook before, but I needed yours. And I felt convinced that I need this in my kitchen.
Same.
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
I don't cook.
And you don't cook. Like, I just need this book. I feel like it needs to be in my home.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How do you build depth with your audience? Because it's food, right?
Yeah.
So you're not private. I mean, you're not out there like that. You don't share stories like that. It's just food, but you seem to, a lot of people fluctuate to see what Yumna's doing.
Yeah.
How do you think you built that?
I think it's by being vulnerable and being honest. And I think I share a lot of the mistakes that I make along the way. And I think that makes me more human and just makes me more relatable. So I think people really appreciate that. And yeah, I don't get too much into my private life as much, but I'll share my kids every now and then. I'll share my husband, joking around, breaking down boxes after mail day and funny things like that. And so I think at the end of the day, I show the realness and the humanness of me and the fact that I make mistakes and the fact that I'm just here. And also I think that responding to people, I really take I take that with so much, like I appreciate every minute that someone's taking to actually write me a comment. And so I respond on my Instagram. I actually even hired someone to help me respond to comments, so I'll respond for the first couple of days. And if things come in days later where I'm not seeing them, that person is responsible for those comments that come in later.
That's selfish because I want to know, for me, how do I do that too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because people are asking questions. They're taking time out of their day to ask you a question. And on my DMs, I'll respond to everybody. So I think that, and people will tell me all the time, I am so shocked that you're responding to me right now. And I get this all the time where you're probably never going to see this, but I just wanted to tell you like how much I love your recipe. I'm like, I saw this.
That's
and
so
that
cute.
means everything to me. The amount of times I get, you're probably never going to see this. I should just screenshot them. It's amazing. And I will always write back and I'll say, I saw it and thank you so much or whatever it is. Or yeah, here, let me help you answer your question. And on the website, I respond and my team responds to 100%. We respond to everything that comes in. We don't leave any comment, any question unturned. So I think that people know that they're talking to a real human and I care and I make mistakes and I'm vulnerable and I love my job and I'm here to answer any questions and be a resource for them.
What's the long-term goal for Feel Good Foodie?
I think long term, I want to be a household name in people's homes and their kitchens, that they can rely on me for recipes, for kitchen hacks, for time-saving tricks, for getting dinner on the table as quickly as possible. And I think that I want to make sure people are having fun while doing that. And in this first cookbook that I wrote, I think having fun is testing out Mediterranean things that maybe some people didn't think of before to make recipes just a little bit more interesting.
Do you think that you'll ever sail into the sunset and just call it quits?
I think so. I think that I'm such a type A person that it'll be like when I'm 60. And I think at that point, I'll probably still be dabbling or something and just, curious about something, I don't know that I'll completely call it quits. But I'd love to do more cookbooks, and I actually created a product called Oath, and I'd love to continue pushing that forward and make that into, multi-million-dollar company one day, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you, and it's because you talk about your kids a lot
Yeah.
and how important they are, Adam and Kareen.
Yeah.
Let's say, Allah Tawal Ba'amrik, inshallah, after a very long time, you're not here with us anymore, and this is 20, 30 years into the future. And they're just going on, Kareen tells Adam, let's look at mom's videos. And they come across this clip, and you're not here anymore.
Yeah.
What would like a message to Kareen and Adam be?
I think it would be not to ever give up, regardless what happens, and not to ever accept no for an answer. Because I think that in life, there's a lot of people that can turn you down and try to shut you down. And, for example, as smart as I was in high school, my counselor told me not to apply to University of Michigan Ann Arbor because I didn't have the highest ACT score. And he told me, nope, don't apply. I don't think you should. And I didn't listen to him. And I think that, things would have been differently if I did listen to him. And people will try to, same thing when I started my Instagram page, I got a lot of people who are like, why are you wasting so much time doing that when you have a really good full-time job and you get paid really well? Like, that seems really silly. And I was like, no, I will not take your criticism down, And then when I wanted to write this cookbook as well, and people said, who reads cookbooks anymore? Who writes cookbooks anymore? Why would you even do something like that? And I said, no, and so don't take people's judgment and don't take people's no as your answer. Carve your own path, make your own answer, and, never give up. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yumna, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been so delightful.
This was very nice.
Thank you. I
Inshallah,
appreciate
we'll
it.
talk again.
Sounds good. I'd love that.
All right.